Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. I'm Suzy Vance, and I'm here with Sean Hay.
Thank you, Suzy.
You're welcome, Sean. So, Sean, you run this with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
You have this advertising firm in Valparaiso.
Yep.
How did you get into this business? Way back when? Did you think you'd be doing it as a kid?
Gosh, no. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be an architect.
Oh.
I did. I don't know why at this point. I just remember that I really enjoyed kind of creating space when, as a kid, you play with toys and things like that.
Right.
And Legos, you remember Legos?
It's pretty visual.
Yeah, it is very visual. And I think that's sort of what drew me in that direction is the idea of just like how you craft space. And I thought, because I didn't, when I went to college, I didn't really have anybody to say like, hey, you should really do this. It was more like, I'm just going to go to college and follow what I've wanted to do since I was 10. And I got into it and I realized
this is into architecture.
Yes, I went for architecture and I got into it and I was like, oh boy, like there are pieces of it that I love, but there are certain things that I'm just not good at. And the actual act of like, it was the math, I think, of like determining like the loads of like the building, the buildings and everything like that. It just
wasn't your thing.
It didn't make me excited. So after I wandered around a bit trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I ended up...
This is before or after school?
After school. Well, I got about 3 years into school. And at that point, you're like 3.5 years, and I'm like, okay, do I change and stay longer, or do I just finish it and then find my way? And I think that was the right move. I decided to just finish it and then find my way afterwards, because that, in the age that we're in now, like, you don't necessarily need to have, a master's degree or whatever to really like do what you're passionate about.
And you get to change your mind a number of times anyway.
And you don't have to go into huge amounts of debt to do it. So,
right.
So,
you get out of school, you have this degree that you are not passionate about.
Right.
What happened next?
I went to work I had worked my way through college in retail at Sears, actually, the 100-plus-year-old department store chain. They were a really great employer at that point, and they had this program where they could take people from the stores, because I worked in the stores in Colorado, and move up to the corporate office and learn the retail trade and become buyers, and I went that direction.
Okay.
And it was...
How long did that last?
Oh, quite a while. I moved up right after 9/11. I moved up to the corporate office in early 2002. And I was there...
Corporate office is Chicago?
Hoffman Estates.
All right.
But yes, same
goodness.
Thing. Yep.
Okay.
First grown-up job, really kind of a thing. And I learned a ton. There were just so many really smart people there that had been in the industry for a long time. So I got to, balance like the creative and the analytical sides of my brain, because you're like analyzing performance of stores and how much inventory to give them, but you're also like helping create assortments, like what looks good together and what do you want to make sure that a store gets so that the table pops and, things like that, that's more like the less tangible side of retail.
Right.
And
but the side that apparently makes quite a difference.
Yes. I mean, that's that without somebody there to kind of watch it, then, you don't really get, the sales don't happen because people aren't excited to buy.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the business of creating excitement to buy.
Well, I mean, that's I didn't know it at the time, but that's kind of what marketing is, right? It's like you're getting people excited about like what you're proposing, and it's a lot of it is, the words that you use, a lot of it is the images that you use, a lot of it's just like that, like
that package.
The whole like just like you're just standing off the edges where it's like what's holding them back, or what do you want to throw in there to tantalize them, kind of a thing. So that's a lot of what I learned.
That's fascinating.
During my time there.
And that time came to an end.
It did. I guess you could sort of combine that with my time. I went to work for another department store chain up in Milwaukee, and there I just did product development. So we would travel to Asia, we would work with the product designers, we would shop Paris and stuff like that, and really just learn about what's coming. It was like, I don't know if this really happens that much anymore because this feels like it was a million years ago, but and everything is just so instantaneous now. But back then, if it was in the markets in Paris, then it would be in the U.S. markets the next year, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
So we would go and see, okay, what's happening now, and how do we translate that to what people are going to be looking for in the U.S. the next year, and then we'd work with our factories to create the right products at the right price points and the measurements and the specs and all that kind of stuff.
So that's a far cry from what you're doing today.
It is.
I mean, it's not.
It is. It's interesting though, because I look back on it and I'm like, it's the
Perfect
tactics.
tutorial.
Yeah, the tactics are different, but the idea is the same. You're still like, you're telling a story, you're getting people excited about like what you're presenting in some way or another. You're getting them to buy. And it's just that the way that I do it now with websites and copywriting and social media, it's just, that's much different than what I did back then.
Yeah. So how did that happen?
How did that happen? Very much an evolution. And I think, if you think about retail is just so much different now. Like there were department stores like Marshall Field's and Macy's and Sears and Penney's, and so many of them are bankrupt and gone. And it's just people shopped differently. So that sort of forced me and a lot of other people to say, okay, what do I want to do differently? Because the only way to survive in that arena is to just move everywhere. And I got tired of it, like you travel enough and you move enough and you're like, I just want to settle down and have a home. And so we are thank you. And so, I'm kind of evolving a little bit over time. And through a couple jobs, I got introduced to e-commerce, which introduced me to digital marketing. And then I moved into digital marketing during one of those jobs and found that like I could still really love what I was doing, just using different skills, different tools. And I was fortunate to have employers that gave me the opportunity to learn on the job, basically, some of those tools. So I got really good at email marketing and got to observe just the different channels, the way that people make websites and social media and emails work to drive people. So that's this is, the last 10 plus years that I've kind of been able to experience that.
And you've been out on your own.
Yes. And then I decided.
Ooh, that's huge.
Yes. Yes.
You said yes.
I did.
What tapped you on the shoulder?
I don't know if I want to say this, but I have never, it's never been super easy to be my boss, if that makes sense. I hold myself to a high standard and I hold my bosses to a high standard. And so I was never really good at just being a good employee and just like putting my head down and doing work. I was always challenging and not always the best way. But I reached a point where I thought, well, maybe I should try to be the boss, because I'd always just worked for somebody else. And I thought, okay, I've accumulated all these skills and experience, and I'm ready to try it now. And so I initially was just after I left my last full-time role, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna freelance a little bit, see what happens. And at the same time, I was starting my own little clothing company and just seeing which one would work better. And
I'm sure glad the clothing company didn't work better.
It did not work. Very much did not work. I still
have all those things in the basement.
I still have all the inventory. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Mostly because I just didn't have the time to work on it because the freelance marketing thing turned into something really that people were really interested in. So,
And
and
today, how
today-
did you relocate to Valparaiso?
How did I personally relocate to Valparaiso or professionally? Both.
What made you do that?
Well, I guess
You fell in love?
I did. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
I
happens.
did. Yes.
And that person lived in Valpo.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
And so you became the gift in Northwest Indiana.
Well, I guess so.
I think so.
Well, I think Northwest Indiana is really an interesting place. You know,
It is.
There's a lot of just diversity in terms of like, types of people and types of jobs and types of flora and fauna, and so it's just cool. You can, in the space of like 25 miles, you've got the lake, you've got farmland, you've got factories, you've got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a neat space.
So you've got a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and hopefully they all need your help.
I think that there's quite a few that, obviously, one of the things that we like to do is just like we don't set ourselves in a niche and say we're only going to serve doctors or whatever. Like we work with all kinds of small businesses, a lot of them here in Northwest Indiana, but some outside of the area too. And it's everything from professional services to healthcare to HVAC, tons of nonprofits.
To artists and people who do crazy video podcasts.
Yeah, even video podcasters. But that's I think a lot of the fun about it too is that you're always working on a new problem every day. It's not just like stamp, repeat, because we don't like to do work like that. It's really fun to problem solve a little bit and say, okay, what specific audience are you trying to reach, and what's the best way to kind of put those puzzle pieces together to get people to get excited about, what you're offering.
That's what excited me about practicing law. It's somebody came in with a new problem every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So here we are.
And the firm that you started is called?
It's called JCMA. We do JCMA Design, Marketing, Media, and Technology. We're a full-service marketing agency, which I think is great. On top of just being what normally falls into marketing,
right?
Web design and graphic design and email and social and all that kind of stuff. We also have technology, which Joe does, and that
supports the rest of it.
It's a nice kind of like balance there, because sometimes clients come, they're like, okay, I need a new website, but I also want to like get better at collecting my customers' information and have like a CRM, and that's where Joe can come in and say, we can make it so easy for you, because the platforms that we can build are just easy to use, and they're not like, it's not like a $20,000 investment or something like that. Like it's very reasonable. Like just it grows with you kind of a thing.
And one of the really amazing things that you've done recently that Joe did along those lines is called Rita.
Yes. Specifically built for nonprofits, because we work with so many nonprofits here in Northwest Indiana, and he asks everybody if they're in spreadsheet hell, because he knows, and we know, that they just transfer data back and forth from spreadsheet to spreadsheet to try to keep track of donors and events and all this kind of stuff. And it would just be so much easier if there was one place where they could just put that information in, and then
everybody could reach it and fill it and change it.
And there's one source of truth, and it's not like, oh, you have the wrong dated spreadsheet and all that kind of stuff. So it's been nice to really see people get excited about that, because who knew that there was such a gap there for something that was simple and easy to use and didn't cost a fortune, sort of a thing.
So this is a product you now have.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Rita.
Yep.
Well, is there anything else we should know about you besides how to find you?
Boy, I don't know. I think you covered most of it, but you can reach us at jcmainc.com, and give us a ring at 219-728-4188. But happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. This has been a real treat and a long time coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much for sharing, Sean Hay.
Anytime.
All right.
Okay.
Bye. Creating from the heart, the artistry of living. See you next time.